Hey everybody, and welcome to our HTBox AllReady community stand-up. We are jamming here, just talking about kind of how things are progressing on the project, get a little update about direction, upcoming codeathons, things that we've got in the works, and also some technical direction. And we've got special guests with us here today. So thanks, Brock, for joining us. But I'm going to start things off by going to Mr. Richard Campbell, who has done a podcast or two.
It's true, I have. Thanks for bringing that up. I'm a little uncomfortable, on a microphone or anything, but I find my way.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, okay, you can not believe that. What's funny is I don't know where we actually are with codeathons for this year. There's a bunch of prospects, but I don't know we can talk about any of them just yet. So it's I think we're all coming off the high that was NDC London. It was a really, really great couple of days. Got a ton done. Got to hang out with Steve Gordon, which is a good day any day of the week. And now we're sort of gathering up our pieces and figuring out work items. But I think one of the themes of this particular call is going to be identity, because that came up at NDC London and has now made some progress due to Mr. Gordon.
Yeah, and we do have, especially as we start talking about things like multi-tenancy and organizational roles and things like that, this is going to be, now it's no longer a function of one deployment working for one organization. We need to understand better how that's going to play out and how we can tie identity in.
Yeah, a couple of the requirements that we sort of talk through is this reality that often we're going to deal with organizations that have fairly formal authentication structures already. So how can we work with them rather than forcing them to make yet another username and password? And then, as you said, multi-tenancy. This is a toolbox. There's a lot of apps, and wouldn't it be convenient if you've gone through the process of being authenticated for one, we can give you rights to many of them.
Right. And now, as far as the codeathons go, I've been talking with a few people. I'm at a consultancy called Clear Measure based out of Austin, Texas, and we actually have about 35 folks on board of the company, and there's been a few people have reached out and started asking if there's ways to get involved. So I'm going to try and start something internally here and try and get a day and maybe even head down to Austin for the day and just starting to get some of those conversations happening. It's still early, but that could happen. And I believe the Calgary.net user group has been talking as well. They ran one last year, and I think they're interested in running another one here. They had a good dozen people come out for the last one, and I think it'd be there's actually some regular contributors who have come out of that, and so perhaps we can get another one organized there as well. So not dark in that sense.
For folks who don't know, it's like, a dozen people at a codeathon is what we've found works best. You don't actually want 100 people. It's one piece of software. Like you'll beat it to death. So it's a small group of excited folks working hard with some pizza can get a lot done in a weekend with something like that. But
yeah, that's a really good point. Oh, go ahead.
There more and more we're seeing organizations interested in working on our projects as a team building exercise, and Steve Gordon's group is another example of that.
Yeah, and the other thing, like to your point on the size there, Richard, really quickly, if you're interested in organizing a codeathon, by all means, reach out to us. It's at HTBox on Twitter. I'm Canadian James. There's Tony Surma, Richard Campbell. You can reach out to any of us, and we can help you get started. But as far as the sizing goes, you wouldn't want to work on a software team like one application and have 40 people on it and not have that broken down into smaller chunks. So yeah, a dozen people, that can be a really productive weekend. Okay, well,
Absolutely.
we'll keep that top of minds, and if you are interested, please reach out to us. We'll help get that sorted. Thank you very much. I know Jim is here as a witness today, so thanks for joining us, Jim. And probably no updates on your side, but again, always appreciate having you on.
I can just throw in just a couple things real quick. So first of all, I apologize for the noise. I'm in a coffee shop in Woodstock, Illinois, which is where the movie Groundhog Day was filmed. So we were all just watching Groundhog Day this morning, my daughter and a bunch of her friends. So it's my expectation that after this call, we're going to be back here tomorrow doing the same stand-up. So we'll just keep.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the weekly community stand-up for.
Right. So a couple things on our end. We are looking for events in March and April for which we can actually apply the application. One other thing I just kind of want to put on people's radar is our organization has decided in October that we are going to try to, as a national organization, install 100,000 smoke alarms in 3 weekends. And so this might be the kind of thing where we try to get this in shape where we can actually make this a really viable part of that project. So something big to shoot for in October. So just putting that on people's radars as well. So, that's it for now until we talk tomorrow.
Yeah. We'll say the same things, but thank you, Jim. Steve.
Yep. So as you sort of alluded to at the start of the call, this week has been lots of homework for me on Identity Server, just reading up on the product, how it all links together, and how we might look to move what we've currently got in AllReady over to something a bit more robust and gives us a bit more sort of scope for the future by splitting that out a bit. So Brock and Dominic were very kind and gave me sort of some time this week. So we chatted through the product, helped sort of get my head into exactly how it all fits together. And I've now got to the point where I think I understand where we might want to go now with AllReady and how we might want to split out the identity piece. And yeah, just going to spend some time sort of working through that with Brock and see if it makes sense, if it's a proper way to go.
Yeah, so like right now, just if anybody is interested in what we're doing on identity, we have basically been limited to using social login. That's through the default identity providers, and a really EP-ish type token thing where we were authorizing API calls for folks, but very primitive and not what it needs to be, not nearly robust. It was one of those good enough things, and unfortunately most things that are good enough aren't. So we definitely needed to make the next step. And Steve, I know you, because of the conversations that came out of NDC, you've also reached out to Brock. Brock, could you just really quickly give us the elevator pitch on what Identity Server is going to help? I know your elevator pitches are usually like an hour long at conferences, but if
yeah, they tend to be. Here, let me see if I can turn my camera on. I didn't figure you guys need to look at me all down there the whole time. So Identity Server is going to help you guys centralize your whatever you're using for your identity management. The goal of it is to provide you with some of these modern security protocols, namely OpenID Connect and OAuth 2. And so the design of it is it's middleware, actually, an ASP.NET Core. You can plug that into whatever you currently have in your application for identity management. So you guys are using ASP.NET Identity, totally fine. That's going to be your backend database for managing your users. And then putting that all into a single app then gives you the flexibility of having lots of different apps. You don't have to do this monolith sort of thing. And then also with this protocol support, you're going to get like your API security modernized, like you were, saying you were looking for. So, the mainly focuses on these protocols: OpenID Connect and OAuth 2. The design of it's really all about flexibility for your user database. So your multi-tenancy issues aren't something necessarily that Identity Server will solve. That's still going to be a data problem that you're going to have to figure out. But Identity Server definitely can sit on top of that and help shield all of your apps from having to worry about all those problems.
So the middleware that we stand up in each of the applications, so assuming that we've got multiple applications down the road and we do want to share users, we've got the option. Like one of the things that we'd like to be able to do is say, okay, well, these organizational people, the Red Cross is using these 3 applications and we want them to have a single login for each of those. But the volunteers are just folks that are signing up on Facebook, or they heard about things on Twitter. So, and we don't need to have those users when they sign into one, we don't need to have them to the other as well. So we can, I think what I understand is that we can use the middleware to isolate the individual identity stores for the local accounts, but then use a shared login that we can trust across applications. I mean, there's obviously some configuration to layer on top of that, and there'll be some custom work to put on top of that. But
sure. So a few things here. So there are 2 sort of layers to it. There's the authentication piece and then the authorization piece. So Identity Server is helping you with the authentication piece, where that is coming from somewhere other than your app. So in other words, your apps individually don't each collect credentials from the user. And so the whole idea of factoring that out of every one of your apps and centralizing it, that's the whole point with the, the whole security protocols, single sign-on and all that. So it's giving you all that protocol support. It also can help broker to, let's say Red Cross already has their own user database for those employees. They can, federate, we can get that linked in, but then for your volunteers who want to just set up a Google account directly with you guys, that's also totally doable. So again, Identity Server is going to help broker all that. You still have to write code to manage all that, mapping all that data, mapping those users. But then at the result of all of that is the authentication over to the app. And now the app has a unique ID for the user, and that can be used to do whatever you need to do. If those users then need to go to a second app, a third app, you're going to get single sign-on across that. Okay? The authorization piece then, should a user be in the app? That's not necessarily Identity Server's job. So you still have to figure out, based on the identity of the user, if they should be there or not.
Right, and we have at the point of entry into the application. So when we resolve those, any of the claims that come back from the author or the authentication ticket, we can then map that to the internal roles and add the claims that we need as well. And then they're going to port that through the application, and that's what we do the authorization off of.
Yeah, absolutely. So when they show up, you can do your, like I said, or like you said, whatever app specific authorization. So usually different apps have the different notion of authorization and different permissions. And so how you model that is entirely up to, the app. It could be flags in a database, or you could just have logic in the app to say, oh, if you're not in this role, you shouldn't be here. So, lots of different ways to do authorization depending on what you're trying to protect.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's great. I think rather than taking up too much of your time right now and speaking in generalities, I've actually worked with Identity Server in the past a little bit. I know, Steve, you've been diving into it as well. Maybe what we can do is offline from the stand-up, let's pick up the ball and carry it a little ways down the field. And then maybe if you wouldn't mind, maybe we could set up a session offline or broadcast, whatever, where we kind of talk through some of our ideas for design and from you, and whatever level you're willing to help us out with, it'd certainly be appreciated. I know you've got your own things, we all do, but certainly if some kind of guidance check would be definitely appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's not a problem.
Wonderful. Okay, Richard, anything else to add before we close out?
I'm just in awe of all this enthusiasm for security. It's like, who are you people?
You should see me geek out over Excel. Like,
no, James,
I try and keep that.
I'm glad. I'm glad we're moving forward on this. And Jim, I think we're all in to be sure we're part of those campaigns for March and April. We'll be ready.
Okay, what other point of note on the project? We were able, Tony worked feverishly from the learnings coming out of NDC. I know Bill spent a lot of time on it as well. I was in there a little bit. I think Steve was working on it too. We had some build on, and it's been resolved, and we are now building, and the app is running again out in Azure in the test environment. So that's wonderful. If anybody was watching that happen, so that's great, and that's off our books as well. That'll probably do us for this week. Thank you everyone who joined in, and for the dozens of people that watch after the fact. Definitely enjoy having the questions that come back to us, and the tweets and everything shared out, and please feel free to join. Get us on. You can join the project on GitHub. Just go to github/HTBox. Look for the AllReady project, all kinds of documentation and everything there to help get you started. Thanks a lot, everyone, and have a great couple of weeks. We'll catch you in 2 weeks on the next stand-up.